then after that, obviously, with the Trojan horse story, right, Troy itself will fall. We're told then, but the old and noble Priam protested strongly. Line 648. Don't make me sit on a chair, Achilles, prince, not while Hector lies uncared for in your camp. Give him back to me now. No more delay. I must see my son with my own eyes. This idea of sight is going to be really important in the last lines of this poem. Accept the ransom I bring to you, a king's ransom. Enjoy it, all of it. In other words, here's the time. Of course, we know Achilles has no use for time because he's about to die, right? Return to your own native land, safe and sound, since now you've spared my life. The ironies run deep. He says, take my ransom I'm giving to you, go back to your homeland and enjoy it. Of course, this isn't going to happen because Achilles he's already took the bite out of the apple, right? No question. We're told, though, a dark glance. And the headstrong runner Achilles answered, no more, old man. Don't tempt my wrath. This is compelling because we realize these two haven't fully buried anything. They're not pals, in other words. And here Achilles says, you better watch it. Don't make me upset. Of course, the word wrath takes us to the word rage, which takes us to the opening line of the poem, right? Not now. My own mind's made up to give you back your son. A messenger brought me word from Zeus, my mother, Thetis, who bore me, the old man of the sea's daughter. And what's more, I can see through you, Priam. No hiding the fact from me. One of the gods has led you down to Achaea's fast ships. In other words, you had help, Hermes, right? No man alive, not even a rugged young fighter, would dare to venture into our camp. Never. How could he slip past the sentries unchallenged, or shoot back the bolt of my gates with so much ease? So don't anger me now. Don't stir my raging heart still more. Under my own roof, I may not spare your life, old man. Supplement that you are may break the laws of Zeus. We're told the old man's terrified. Very much, this happens, right? Where somebody comes back and then terrified. He obeyed the order. We're told that Achilles bounds out the door like a lion, right? He goes and he tells them to put the corpse of Hector, get it ready to go, right? They leave behind 2 capes or finely woven shirts. We're back to this notion of the weaving again, to shroud the body. And at line 680, Achilles will call the serving woman out. And he'll say, bathe and anoint the body. Bear it bear it aside first. Priam must not see his son. In other words, don't let the king see what I've done to his boy. Achilles feared, overwhelmed by the sight of Hector wild with grief, Priam might let his anger flare, and Achilles might fly into a fresh rage himself, cut the old man down and break the laws of Zeus. So in other words, Achilles is aware old man Priam might lose his anger rage, and that would lead the two of them to fight, and of course the young man would kill the old man. So, when the maids had bathed and anointed the body sleek with olive oil and wrapped it round and round in a braided battle shirt and handsome battle cape, we're back to the robes motif again. This is a powerful scene, 690, a line. Then Achilles lifted Hector up in his own arms and laid him down on a bier. And comrades helped him raise the bier and body onto the sturdy wagon. Then with a groan, Achilles called his dear friend Patroclus by name. Feel no anger at me, Patroclus, if you learn, even there in the house of death, I let his father have Prince Hector back. He gave me worthy ransom, and you shall have your share from me, as always, your fitting lordly share. So he vowed. And brilliant Achilles strolls back to his shelter, sat down on the well-curved chair that he had left. At the far wall of the room, leaned toward Priam, and spoke firmly the words the king had come to hear. Your son, line 703, 704, your son is now set free, old man, as you requested. Hector lies in state. With his first light of day, you will see for yourself. Again, notice how many times sight is being referenced at the end of this. See for yourself as you convey him home. Now, at last, let us turn our thoughts to supper, which is fascinating because when he arrived, Achilles was finishing supper. So he's ready to have a meal. What's going on here? Hospitality. It's not that Achilles is hungry. He knows that Priam probably hasn't eaten because he's been grieving. And so, hospitality. Xenia is the Greek word, right? To show hospitality. The same thing that Achilles did, by the way, in Book 9 with that embassy, right? Now, at last, let us turn our thoughts to supper. Even Niobe, with her lustrous hair, remembered food. Though she saw A dozen children killed in her own hall, 6 daughters, 6 sons in the pride and prime of youth. True. Lord Apollo killed the sons with a silver bow, and Artemis, showering arrows, killed the daughters. Both gods were enraged at Niobe. Oh, well, what's going on with this Niobe reference? And by the way, it's a fascinating study that Shakespeare obviously gave some hint of this, right? We got ghosts in the opening lines of Hamlet, and we've got a mention of Niobe later in the play. So we got some interesting stuff going on here with this Niobe reference. Well, I think there's several things going on here. One important reference that's going on is that we've got a symbol. Think of it. A symbol of parents who lose their children and still have to find some way to go on. He says it, so we too, O king, must think of food. Later, you can mourn your beloved son once more, when you bear him home to Troy, and you'll weep many tears. Then, we're told he springs to his feet, Achilles, and he does what Patroclus normally used to do. That is to say, he makes the meal. He sets it out, right? Achilles, we're told, served the meal at line 740 or so. And then, I think, this is my own opinion, I think we have the most important single scene of all of the Iliad. Because of what the poem is trying to argue. The poem is trying to show us what it is to be human in the middle of senseless violence. I'm quoting a scholar. I'll come back to this quote at the end of the lecture. Here, at line 740 or so. Achilles served the meat. They reached out for the good things that lay at hand. And when they had put aside desire for food and drink, Priam, the son of the Dardans, gazed at Achilles. He looks at Achilles. This is the man who's killed his sons. This is the man who's destroying Troy. But he gazed at Achilles, marveling now at the man's beauty, his magnificent build. Face to face, he seemed a deathless god. Notice that the gods don't go face to face, and yet here he says, we're told, it's as if Priam is for the first time seeing Achilles face to face. And Achilles gazed and marveled at Dardan Priam, beholding his noble looks, listening to his words. Now what's going on here? Well, the Bhagavad Gita, of course, tells us to recognize true humanity. Recognize, remember yourself and others, and all being in yourself. Right? That is to say, when we can see the other as somehow akin to us, when we can see the foreign as somehow human, then and only then are we truly human. And I think this is a pivotal moment. I think Achilles is finally, he's got it. Right? He comes back. The beginning of the poem, his rage takes him out alone. He loses his best friend Patroclus. He goes through the grieving. He goes through the slaughter. He kills the Hector. He gets the revenge. And then he realizes, I can get the revenge, but it doesn't mean anything. And then he's sitting with the father of Hector, and it hits him. We're told, but once they had had their fill of gazing at each other, the old majestic Priam broke the silence first. Put me to bed quickly, Achilles, prince. Time to rest, to enjoy the sweet relief of sleep. Not once have my eyes closed shut beneath my lids from the day my son went down to beneath your hands. Day and night I groan, brooding over the countless griefs, groveling in the dung that fills my walled-in court. But now, at long last, I've tasted food again, and let some glistening wine go down my throat. Before this hour, I had tasted nothing. Achilles helps to put the old man to bed, and we finally finish with the last lines that Achilles will speak at 775 and following. Achilles asks, one more point. Tell me, be precise about it. How many days do you need to bury Prince Hector? I will hold back myself and keep the Argive armies back that long. This is a compelling line because we're about to finish this poem, but the war isn't over. We've got more fighting, we've got more slaughter, we've got more killing that's going to happen. But Achilles is now ready to say, I'll pause, how much time do you need? And the old and noble Priam answered, slowly. It's a great eye. Slowly, like, are you for reals? So you're not only just going to give me my boy back, you're going to let me bury him in a timely, in a good fashion? If you truly want to give me to give Prince Hector burial full, royal honors, you'd show me a great kindness. Echoing, of course, what Zeus has said, that in the end, Achilles is actually kind. Achilles, if you would do exactly as I say, notice the reversal. Now, it's old man Priam giving Achilles orders. You know how crammed we are inside our city. There's an ironic line. Everybody's hiding in the city. The city, of course, will not save those walls, will not save them in the end. How far it is to the hills to haul in timber, and our Trojans are afraid to make the journey. We'll immediately hear that word journey, and we'll think of Odyssey. It's twice that it's used, journey. All 9 days, well, he says, 9 days we should mourn him in our halls. On the 10th, we'd bury Hector, hold the public feast. On the 11th, build the barrow high above his body. On the 12th, we'd fight again. So in other words, can you give me 11, 12 days? If fight, we must. In other words, Priam is like, we're going to have to keep fighting, aren't we? Then we get the last lines for Achilles. The swift runner Achilles reassured him quickly, all will be done. These are the last words that he will speak in this poem. All will be done, O Priam, as you command. I will hold our attack as long as you require. With that, he clasped the old man by the wrist, they shake hands, by the right hand, to free his heart from fear. Then Priam and Herald, mind set on the journey home. Again, we think of the Odyssey, don't we? That's the poem we're about to turn to, right? Bedded down for the night within the porch's shelter, and deep in his sturdy, well-built lodge, Achilles slept with Briseis in all her beauty, sleeping by his side. So that's the second movement. The third and final movement, of course, will be when we got the whole notion of, dude, why are you sleeping? Hermes is going to ask him, right? The comment that's ironic at line 800 is when Hermes will ask Priam, "What? You're sleeping? Not a care in the world, old man?" By the way, this is the same thing that you'll remember Patroclus said to Achilles, right? Look at you, how you sleep in the midst of men who'd kill you, and just because Achilles spared your life. Now, yes, you've ransomed your dear son for a king's ransom, but wouldn't the sons you left behind be forced to pay 3 times as much for you alive? That's ironic, because he said he has no sons. We know he has 9, right? The king, we're told, woke in terror, line 810, and home he goes. We're told at line 825, Cassandra is the first one to see. Drawn by the mules, stretched out on his bier, she screamed, and her scream rang through all Troy. Come, she says, look down, you men of Troy, you Trojan women. Behold Hector now. If you ever once rejoiced to see him striding home alive from battle, he was the greatest joy of Troy for all our people. Her cries plunged Troy into uncontrollable grief. The ironies just start to mount here, because we know that Cassandra, of course, will be there at the end, screaming, "You guys, don't put the horse in the city, and it'll be too late." And not a man or woman was left inside the walls. They streamed out of the gates to meet Priam, bringing in the body of the dead Hector. His loving wife and noble mother was first. She embraces the head, reminding us, of course, of what Thetis did to Achilles, and of course what Achilles did to Patroclus. A wailing throng of people milled around them. And now all day long, we're told, the setting sun went down. There was wailing, right? It will be Priam who says, I'm bringing my boy inside of the city, and then the lamentations will begin. First, Andromache, line 850. White-armed Andromache, cradling the head of Hector again. It's this motif. Man-killing Hector gently in her arms. Oh, my husband, cut off from life so young. You leave me a widow, lost in the royal halls, and the boy, only a baby. She'll again mention Aesthetics. The son we bore together, you and I so doomed. I cannot think he will ever come to manhood. Long before that, the city will be sacked, plundered, top to bottom, because you are dead, her great guardian, you who always defended Troy, who kept her loyal wives and helpless children safe, all who will soon be carried off in the hollow ships, and I with them. And then she turns to her infant. And you, my child, will follow me to labor somewhere at harsh, degrading work, slaving under some heartless master's eye. That, or some Achaean marauder, will seize you by the arm and hurl you headlong down from the ramparts. Horrible death. Depending upon which story you read, that will in fact be Paris, Eurypylus, Achilles' son, or it will be Odysseus who throws Astyanax down. Horrible death. We then have Hecuba at lines 880. She says, Hector, dearest to me by far of all my sons, and dear to the gods while we still shared this life. They cared about you still. I see even after death many the sons I had, whom the swift runner Achilles caught and shipped on the barren salt sea as slaves. We think of Lycaon, right, as comes to mind, right? She says, Patroclus, whom you killed. Not that he brought Patroclus back to life by all of that disgrace of the son's body. But I have you here with me now, fresh as the morning dew. You will lie in the royal halls. Finally, Helen in her lament at line 895. Hector. Fascinating that it's Helen who's given some of the last lines of the poem. Dearest to me of all my husband's brothers, my husband Paris. And then one more time, as if we can all roll our eyes and say it together. Magnificent as a god. Right, where is he and why isn't he here? He was the one who brought me here to Troy. How I wish I'd died before that day. But this now is the 20th year for me since I sailed here and forsook my own native land. This is hyperbole. It's not been 20 years, it's been 10, right? Yet never once did I hear from you a taunt, an insult. But if somebody else in the royal halls would curse me, one of your brothers or sisters or brothers' wives, trailing their long robes, or robes, right? Even your own mother, not your father, always kind as your own father. Why, you'd restrain them with words, Hector. You'd win them to my side, you, with your gentle temper, all your gentle words. This reminds us of what Briseis said about Patroclus in Iliad 19, 350, right? Same gig. So we finish, finally, with King Priam. We're at lines 9:15 or so. Helen last rings out, O man Priam, now he says, you men of Troy, haul timber into the city, have no fear of an Argive ambush packed with danger. Achilles vowed when he sent me home from the black ships, not to do us harm till the 12th dawn arrives. In other words, we know more war is coming. And then finally, at last, line 925. When young dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, the people massed round illustrious Hector's pyre. And once they gathered, crowding the meeting grounds, they first put out the fires with glistening wine, very much like what happens with Patroclus, wherever the flames still burned in all their glory, all their fury. Then they collected the white bones of Hector, all his brothers, his friends in arms mourning, and warm tears came streaming down their cheeks. They placed the bones they found in a golden chest. This is an interesting golden chest, by the way, because the legend will have it that Andromache tried to hide Astyanax, Hector's boy, inside of this golden chest and was found and killed. Shrouding them round and round in soft purple clothes, they quickly lowered the chest in a deep hollow grave, and over it piled a cope of huge stones closely set, then hastily heaped a barrow. It's interesting, Hector and his boulder comes to mind, and here boulders are over him. Lookouts all around for fear the Achaean combat troops would launch their attack. We know that they're coming, right? We know that they're coming. And once they'd heaped them out, line 940, they turned back home to Troy, and gathering once again, they shared a splendid funeral feast. Now it's not games, but a feast. In Hector's honor, held in the house of Priam, king by will of Zeus. In the final line of the poem, and so the Trojans buried Hector, breaker of horses. Real quickly, I just want to turn back to the opening lines of this poem. Just take a look at the very opening lines of the poem. Rage, goddess. It seems like an eternity we did these lines together, yes. Rage, goddess, sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles. Murderous, doomed, that cost the Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death so many sturdy souls, great fighter souls, but made their bodies carry on feasts for the birds, for the dogs and birds. And the will of Zeus was moving towards its end. Begin, muse, when the two first broke and clashed, Agamemnon, lord of men, and brilliant Achilles. Well, we notice, began with Achilles and Peleus. We end with Achilles and Peleus. We began with Achilles versus Agamemnon. We end with Achilles versus Priam. We began with an argument or an insult, and we end with concord, right? And somehow harmony. We figure it all out. Let's jump quickly to levels 2 and 3. At 2A, well, let's talk some of the major ideas here. Life and the two jars. You got misery, you got blessings. You get a little of both, right? This idea from the Gita of seeing oneself in all being and all being in oneself makes us human, to understand and appreciate another's pain. This is, of course, central, isn't it, to how we read Aristotle's Poetics, right? The power of forgiveness, another major message theme here, right? Letting go, that's part of the humanity. At 2b, well, we got some obvious symbols here. Zeus's jars come to mind, both sides of life. We think about the yin-yang symbol of Taoism, don't we? Cassandra's scream is as well a powerful symbol. Troy will fall, right? We know it's coming. The irony, of course, is that Priam, all his sons, he keeps saying, are gone. And yet, of course, Paris is obviously not gone, right? The Iliad, notice irony. The Iliad begins with Briseis and ends with her in bed with Achilles. But of course, it begs the question: what about the treatment of women in the Iliad? It's a disturbing, right? It's a disturbing study. We've tried to point it out as we've gone. At 3a, notice how this book brings to close all the earlier books. I mean, some readers of this poem have said, "Come on, we got to have the rest of it. What happens?" Achilles said, "Don't need any of it. We know what's coming. We know Achilles is going to die. We know the city of Troy is going to get jacked. We know all that's coming." What a brilliant way to end this poem, right? What is your favorite text of an old man asking a young man for help? We will later study Beowulf, the great Anglo-Saxon poem, and we'll, in Beowulf too, hear in Hrothgar's speech, the idea that sometimes old men need young men, and of course Wiglaf in Beowulf 3 will in fact help to defeat the dragon. What is your favorite text that shows forgiveness? The willingness of letting go. And again, we've mentioned already at 3a the Bhagavad Gita, a classic Hindu scripture that suggests when you can see your enemy, really see, that perspicacity, as Plato will talk about it, then you're human. Well, at 3b, the poem is yours. So what do you think of it? What do you think of Achilles? You think he's simple? You think he's complicated? Does this poem work for you? This poem, too much of what? Maybe sex, maybe